Hello, and welcome to another Dead by Daylight video. Today we're just going to be doing a deep dive into the Hag from Dead by Daylight, so let's just get straight into it. The Hag is a killer similar to Huntress in her basic stats, where she moves at 110% movement speed, or 4.4 meters per second, so slower than the likes of Wraith, Hillbilly or Trapper. She only has a terror radius of 24 meters, which is smaller than the likes of Trapper, Wraith or Hillbilly, again, where they are at 32 meters. And she has a height of average, but not really. It says average if you go on the wiki or on the actual game. It says average, but she is quite short. So pretty much she is like Trapper. She's a territorial killer. She's usually played where you pick a spot on a map, usually the spot you spawn near, and you set up your traps around there. People call it a kind of web of traps, and you stay around that area. You make sure your traps are always up and active, so if the survivors step into them, they will always do something. And her traps, what they do, unlike Trapper, where it will actually trap the survivors, it creates a little clone of you that comes up from the trap. The trap is a small little triangle that she creates on the floor, and it jumps up like a small little clone of you. It uses the same cosmetics you use, and it has a red stain, and you can use an add-on to give it a terror radius. And what it does is it'll just stare at the survivor that triggers it. It'll make a big noise as it jumps up, and it forces the survivor's camera to sort of look towards the Hag, or towards the clone, I mean, which then allows you to teleport to it and then hit the survivor. So she's very good she's not very good at keeping people injured per se, because they can just run away from the web. But if they manage to get into the web and then trigger a trap while in the middle of it, they can get down really, really quickly, because they could trigger a trap, get hit, trigger a trap again, get hit. So generally you don't want to be straying too far out of a range of her web, or you'll be a 110 killer that has no power, and that can really hurt if you're too far away from all your generators and you're just chasing a survivor, and you will just lose the game because you're so slow and have such a weak chase power if it's not already set up. So after you teleport, you obviously arrive, and then you can hit the survivor, or you can just put the trap down, put the trap straight back down, or just keep going and just doing whatever. You don't have to teleport to it, and it does have a certain range to it, but as long as you're around your web, you will be able to teleport to every single trap. If you're on the other side of the map to a trap, then you won't be able to teleport to it. The traps will not trigger if the survivor is crouching. So if the survivor is crouching up to the trap, it won't trigger the Hag Phantasm, that's what it's called, the little clone. It won't come out, you won't be able to teleport to it, and you get no indication that it's actually triggered. And that allows the survivor to get right up to it, and they can sort of just do a little animation. It takes about 2 or 3 seconds, and they can just wipe the trap away. And that gives you an extra trap, but it also removes that one off the floor. So the Hag gets 10 traps that she can put down in total, and then if she goes to put down an 11th one without any of them being triggered, it will just remove the first one and put that one down where you wanted. Most Hags usually use about 8 or 9, and then they usually have one, not just because they want to have one in their pocket in case they need it, but usually because survivors trigger traps and then they reset the traps, and that's usually enough in the web, really. If you can get 10 down, that's great. But most likely it's not going to happen if the survivors can pressure you into keeping some traps in your pocket. So whenever a survivor wipes the trap away, it does just go back into your pocket, so you don't lose out on the trap. They can't wipe it away and then you've just got 9 or 8 or 7, and they can't permanently remove traps. It's just a small countermeasure, so she isn't completely uncounterable. And it does have a fairly short range. The trap, without any add-ons, has a range, and it's the perfect range where if you teleport straight away, you can just get the hit. You can just barely scratch the survivor's back pretty much to get the hit. And yeah, that's pretty much the basics of the Hag. So let's move on. Okay, so one common strategy that a lot of Hag mains use, and it's actually really successful. Whenever I play Hag, this is the strategy I try to go for, because it's not only the easiest, but it's also one of the most successful, is trapping the basement. So as you might have seen in the gameplay, when I got my very first down, I looked to where I knew the basement could have spawned. This would have been 2 spots. It would have been either in this little building or in the shack on the other side of the map. I decided to set up here because this was my initial spawn point, but the basement unfortunately wasn't there. But if I had planned ahead and looked where the basement was, I probably would have gone over to shack and set up around there, because if you can get it down near the basement and you can get into the basement, then that puts the survivors in a really bad spot. Because if you've got one survivor trapped in the basement on the hook, and you've trapped, let's say, shack, because it's one of the most common places on most maps, you can put a trap at the window and both doors, and then you can put a trap at the landing of the stairs, and then at the bottom of the stairs, and then in the middle of the stairs. You can just trap up the entirety of the basement. You can use about 4 or 5 of your traps. And because there's only one way in and out of the basement, you will nearly always have at least one person in the basement at all times. Unless you go so far away that you cannot get back in time to teleport to any of your traps, or you somehow don't see a survivor crouching all the way through the basement. But even then, you get the unhook sound, you can just run straight back. So it's an extremely successful strategy because it allows you to, even if you just hook trade, so you hook one person and then someone else comes in and unhooks them, and then you hook that person that unhooked. Even if you hook trade, you will be hook trading very, very quickly. And because you can usually set up a 3 generator strategy around the shack anyway, then not only can you have the web near your basement, but you can also have the external web on the 3 generators. So then you will usually be getting, especially against an uncoordinated solo queue team of survivors, you will usually be having at least 1 kill by the time you're at maybe 3 or 2 generators. The best strategy against it is just pretty much leaving someone on hook. I played against a trapper the other day, and you can do the same thing with trapper. It's just a little less successful. And what the team all did, they all just did generators. The trapper sat around the basement, and he only ended up getting that 1 kill because he wasn't pressuring anything. But with Hag, it's slightly different because she can teleport, and the range is quite big, so you can pressure the basement and the generators with just your traps. And this does often result in a win. I think every single time I've tried this, except maybe once that I can think of, I've always won, because it's just such a successful strategy against 99% of teams, because they just can't really play around it that well. because especially in solo queue, because not everyone is usually on the same page in solo queue. Some people will think, well, we can just hook trade until we eventually get everyone out of the basement. But if one person thinks that, and then the other 3 survivors think, well, we'll just set on the generators and just allow this person to die. And, you know, it's unfortunate that we can't get them out, but if we sit on the generators, that's the best strategy we've got. And because that one person is on a completely different page, then that screws over the entire team, because that's one extra person not on a generator trying to go for the save, and then bang, there's 2 people in the basement. And then you sort of have to go for the save because you can't win with 2 people, even if they're just sat on gens for 2 minutes, over 2 minutes. You can also, some tags like to just stick to a 3 gen, so they'll just choose 3 generators that are near each other and they'll just web up that area. But some hags like to maybe extend it out to maybe a 4 gen or a 5 gen, so it's like, it's a bit of a safety cushion where you don't have to completely rely on only having 1 generator they need to complete. Instead, you can go to 2 or 3 that they need to complete before the exit gates can be opened. But it also stretches your traps a little bit thin, so it sort of depends on how you like to play, because the 3 gen strategy is really effective, even though it's, you know, they've tried to nerf it a little bit over the past few years. It's still extremely effective because you know, they're the only 3 generators on the map. The survivors cannot, you know, just do a generator on the other side of the map because they're all already done. As you could see in the gameplay, I was only playing against bots, but they never got a gen done on my side of the map because I was constantly over there. I never went to the other side of the map. I only stayed on this side of the map and went into the middle of the map for maybe about 5 seconds to put a trap down, and then I realised, what am I doing? This is too far away from the web. I'll just go back. They did 2 generators on the other side of the map and then never did any more because I didn't allow them to. I was always on it. I was always on a generator, or I was always near the generators, making sure that they were never on it. And this kind of strategy can pretty much force survivors to play risky, and if they play risky, then that usually can result in pretty bad things for the survivors. So yeah, they're the common strategies. Let's move on to the add-ons and common perk builds. Okay, so moving on to the builds that you can use now. So these builds, this is a build like you can use only common perks or just Hags perks. So you got Hex Ruin and Hex Third Seal, they both belong to the Hag. So Hex Ruin will make generators automatically regress whenever a survivor isn't whenever a survivor isn't repairing it. And this is good because it means that you've got more time to set up traps because you don't have to go and kick the generators. But it is a hex perk, which means it can get broken, but because Hag is a trap killer, you can trap the hex totem, which makes it a lot harder to break. And then you've got Hex Third Seal, another one of Hag's perks, which makes it so whenever you hit a survivor, it gives them blindness, which means that they can't see auras, so they won't be able to see your aura whenever you're setting up a trap or anything like that, or generator auras that they can't find. You're also going to be using Hex No One Escapes Death, which whenever the survivors complete all 5 generators, it activates, it makes a dull totem a hex totem, and then over 30 seconds its aura is shown. It increases from 4 meters to 24 meters, and then during this time, or whenever the hex totem isn't broken, survivors suffer from exposed, and they get increased, and you get increased movement speed by 4%. So they get 1 shot down, and you're a little bit better in chase. And then you're going to be using Sloppy Butcher because Hag really benefits from keeping survivors injured. Because instead of having to activate 2 traps to down a survivor, you only need to activate 1. It also decreases the speed at which survivors heal, which means you get more time to set up traps and, you know, catch survivors off guard. 2 good add-ons that you can use. You can use Rusty Shackles, which makes it so the survivors get no indication that they've triggered a trap. No clone spawns, and there's no sound or anything like that. It also has a small side effect that basically it makes you teleport to traps like a tiny bit quicker, but it's not really that beneficial. And then Mint Rag, which lets you teleport to any trap no matter where it is on the level. So no matter the distance, you will always be able to teleport to it, but it puts your teleport cooldown. It puts your teleport on a cooldown of 10 seconds, so you cannot just keep teleporting. So it's not very good if the survivors are pressuring many traps at once, but that usually doesn't happen. And then also going to be using a Turbo Landing Offering because the Hag is good on maps that have a lot of foliage, that you can hide the traps behind rocks or in grass or bushes or anything like that. And she also has a lot of colourful cosmetics that can hide her pretty well. And this is just a pretty basic build for Hag. Corruption's Invention, so at the beginning of the game, 3 Fervous generators are blocked for 2 minutes, which means they cannot do them. They cannot complete those generators, and it pushes them into your web. You're going to be using Deadlock, where after a generator gets completed, the entity will block the generator with the most progress for 25 seconds, and you see its aura in white, so you know which one it is. And then we've already explained Sloppy Butcher, and no one escapes death. So you can also, two good add-ons is the Dried Cicada and the Dragonfly Wings, which both increase the teleport range by 15% and 12.5% respectively. Which basically means on most maps, even just this one, even just the Dried Cicada, you'll be able to teleport to any trap on most maps because it increases your range enough, which makes it pretty big. And then for an offering, we're going to be using Grandma's Cookbook, which takes you to the swamp. This map's good because her traps are made out of mud, and and the floor on this map is also mud, so it makes the traps really difficult to see. And there's a lot of reeds that are really tall, which just further makes the traps even harder to see. And her default cosmetic looks like this, and the map is very dark, so if you're using your default cosmetic, I guess that's a kind of advantage you might have. And this is a basement/Skurchuk hybrid build, where you use agitation so you can move to hooks and specifically the basement easier and quicker. Because you move quicker when you have a survivor over your shoulder. You move 18% quicker, which means you basically move at around about the same speed you would without a survivor on your shoulder. You're going to be using Skurchuk Jagged Compass, which makes it so whenever a survivor gets unhooked, that hook becomes a Skurchuk. And whenever you hook a survivor on a Skurchuk, the aura of the generator with the most progress is shown to you in yellow for 10 seconds. So this can be good because, for example, if the generator that is highlighted in yellow is on about 10% and it's in your web, that means you're in a really good spot, because that tells you that because this is the most progress gen, no other generator on the map has more progress than it. So that means every other generator on the map has 9% or less progress. Also going to be using Pain Resonance, where for every unique survivor you hook on a Skurchuk, the generator with the most progress loses 20% of its progress and starts to regress. But this obviously can only activate on one survivor each. And then we're also going to be using Grim Embrace, which is similar to Pain Resonance, where it activates on each individual unique survivor that gets hooked. So when you move 16 meters away from the hook, all generators get blocked for 10 seconds. And then when you hit 4 tokens, when you move 16 meters, when you move 16 meters away from the hook, instead of 10 seconds, all generators get blocked for 40 seconds. So that's in total 70 seconds survivors cannot do generators. And it also, just as a small little effect, shows the Obsession's aura to you for 6 seconds, which is, it's a nice little effect that isn't bad at all. And then these two add-ons are good because it increases the duration, which means, you could kick a generator and or get a hit, and then you can teleport instead of the trap, because it makes it last longer. So pretty much you can teleport to it after a longer time has passed. And then this one, which increases the setting speed, which basically just means the time it takes for her to draw the triangle on the ground and then stand up and start moving again is 20% shorter. And then you can also, didn't know what else to use really as a map. You could use the Murky Reagent, but I don't know how good it'd be. I brought the Azeroth's Key because the grass usually isn't too bad, and the atmosphere is, it's a darker green kind of colour, so it might make traps a little bit difficult to see. So, and then there's add-ons that you definitely don't want to be using unless you're just memeing around. So, one you're not going to use is the Waterlogged Shoe, because it removes your ability to teleport to traps, which is obviously really bad. But it gives her a 7.5% speed bonus, which means she does technically move quicker than 115%, but it doesn't really matter that much. It's not really that good, because teleporting to traps can actually be a really good ability, and missing out on that is pretty bad. And then whenever the survivors trigger a trap, they get hindered for 9 seconds. Which obviously that makes you much quicker than the survivors, but again, it's not really all that good. The Disfigured Ear, it's a cool little effect. It'd be nice if it was on more add-ons, on more killers, on more powers, but it's not really that good of an effect. It just makes them deafened, which means they're for 6 seconds when they trigger a trap, which basically means, they get it's like a tinnitus effect, where it's just like ringing in the ear. And then you got Grandma's Heart, where whenever a survivor triggers a trap, your terror radius becomes 0, but it makes that clone's terror radius 16 meters. Again, it's not really that good, because you are usually just going to be teleporting to the trap straight away. And then the Scarred Hand, which makes it so the Phantasm traps become solid, so they can body block the survivors, but it again removes the ability to teleport to traps. So you can use these two together as a nice meme build, the Waterlogged Shoe and the Scarred Hand, but it's not actually effective. And yeah, that's the Hag. That's the deep dive into the Hag finished. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. I hope you try out the Hag, because she can actually be quite fun to play when you're teleporting all around the place and stuff. And she can take a bit of effort to get into. I will not lie. She is not the easiest killer to get into, because you have to set up traps, and that means sacrifice time and stuff. But yeah, I recommend giving her a go. There's no harm in giving the killers that you've got a go, because if you don't like them, just don't play them. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.